well as the whole, as well as individual behaviors. And among others, this is also likely to impact the current trend of urbanization and perhaps the way we look at planning as we go forward. For example, till the advent of COVID, there was everybody would look at cities to be densified. So densification was the best way of planning cities, so which would then give them viability and sustainability. But this again is in contradiction to the social distancing and separation that we are talking about. The phenomenal growth of urban cities and their accessibility has brought in a lot of economic growth and social benefits. But on the other side, it has also helped the spread of COVID 2019. Today has forced people to work remotely, and it is not sure whether post-COVID to work from office and commute and spend hours to commute, or would working remotely become the new normal? All of these have a tremendous amount of impact on the real estate business, as well as the way that we plan urbanization going forward. So my first question to Mr. Debashis Sensor is that, sir, you have been largely instrumental in transforming the city into a vibrant and livable city. And we could also see that Newtown has also been taking up several measures in trying to contain the pandemic and ensure the physical and mental well-being of residents of the city. So we would like to share your thoughts, action that were taken by the Newtown, and what is on your views on what would emerge in terms of planning of cities and township post-COVID 2019. Mr. Sen, please.
Well, good evening to everybody. To put it on a plane of what I have seen from the ground view, that all of you are very experienced people, especially Mr. Sureka, Mr. Salarpuria and others. But I have been conducting from the municipal administration point of view, the relief, the help to the seniors, delivering medicine, sanitization, taking care of 3 or 4 quarantine centers in Newtown, the Corona hospital, disposal of waste, and seeing the helplessness.
Sir, we are not getting your video, sir. Is your video on, sir?
Yes, my video is on. But
Mr. Sen is not visible on the screen. Yeah, that's right.
Mr. Datta, we can see him. I think your network is a little challenging. We can also
your
yes,
network.
Sir, we can see
we are also hearing
Vishnu Bangla Gate in the background.
So
yeah, we can hear him.
I think Mr. Sureka,
yes, I can see you, sir. Yes, sir, we can see you, sir.
Huh? Shall I continue?
So we can see you, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So
yes, sir.
Since network is a problem, I'll try to be very brief and point-wise. Point number 1 that I have seen, for example, all of us have known, the change is happening very lightning speed. The auto drivers are selling eggs, and the Toto Walas and Rickshaw Walas are selling vegetables and coming to our door front. So what the great thinker, Atul Harari, the Israeli professor, and I'm very fond of him, he has been pointing out that whatever changes were already happening because of this pandemic, it's happening at a much faster and quicker space. So the auto driver is now selling eggs, somebody is selling vegetable who in his life did not do so. So therefore, trends that were already happening is going to accelerate dramatically in the post-COVID world for insofar as city development and urban development is concerned. Example, now that there is micro-localization, all these metro and buses, and we are seeing the empty streets, and therefore the number of deaths on the road have also come down. And even there was a recent report published from Kolkata Municipal Corporation that the number of dead bodies reaching month to month, year to year has actually decreased. And one of the reasons is that road accidents are not there. So therefore, in the future city, as transportation will definitely be less, people will try to avoid bus and trams and metros, and therefore localized micro-localized city development is going to happen. If you agree to that, therefore, the lay of the land in terms of urban development, in terms of city planning, this is going to change. These very, very broad roads, whether of Newtown or of Red Road, a must part of it, a major part of it must be dedicated to the pedestrian, must be redesigned to reduce accidents. And we have to understand and we have a target that we need to get into this mode of putting people first, which was already happening. The concept of diet roads, for example, that is, roads become thinner. You make them wait in queues and traffic jams so that people go on bicycles, so that people walk. And therefore, we have already undertaken in Newtown a planning exercise with our experts of how we can dedicate many kilometers of road of not allowing any cars to go. It will be only bicycle, it will be only by walking and so on and so forth. So the lay of the land, traffic, and the way the transportation and people move is going to change. It was also happening, already happening. It's going to happen very quickly. That's point number one. Point number two, we are also trying to see if we can make cities, future cities like Newtown and others, those are going to come up into, let us say, 15-minute cities, so that you can walk by or by bike or by something, you can go very quickly to your place of work. Now, work from home, there is a lot of debate, a lot of exercises are going on. Twitter has already announced that you can do work from home for your entire life. TCS has also already said that for 25% only people have to come, 75% are going to work from home. This is the new normal. It was already happening. It was already happening. And now this is all the more important because 75, if you look at it, if you have to have social distancing in the office spaces, which was getting more and more closer to each other, if you have to keep a 2 meter distancing all around, then the office capacity, this open office thing is going to vanish. In any case, mass transportation is going to go, people are going to avoid, and therefore what is going to happen is that work from home is going to happen. So streets should be more empty. So there will be 15-minute cities, and therefore all things would have to be revolved around that. And for that, for example, we are planning to have co-working and co-living places very close to each other. We were talking about the migrant workers, but even if the tech sector, even in the other sector, also we need to plan so that if at all you cannot do work from home, you can stay very close to your work, and that is going to be a very, very nodal way. And since more and more things are going to happen over the net as we are just now doing, and there was a recent study that said for the first time since independence, the amount of bandwidth consumption in rural India exceeded that of the urban area. And therefore, there is going to be more and more bandwidth and remote consulting and all these things. And this will require, on the other hand, a lot of data centers, a lot of computer centers. And while we'll have work from home, and we'll have also increased number of data centers and decentralized ways of doing things so that people can get connected to each other. Talking another thing about work from home, which is going to be very, very talked about the more and more that we come, I think that it has to be tackled on both ways, from the work point of view and from the home point of view. From the home point of view is work from home does not mean working from home, but working from a closed locality. So, for example, we are developing this idea of cocoons, small, very cozy coffee shop, come library, but very close to your residence. Suppose your TCS is located in Newtown, but you stay in Baliganj, and in Baliganj, you don't want to work from home because there are kids moving around, there is no privacy, and you require a peace of mind, and therefore you go to a very, very local, dedicated, residential cocoons as we are calling it, and we have already started designing it. And in all residential areas, like the Kirana shops, these small co-working spaces will come in. Where working from home, actually, it means telecommuting. In the residential areas, these will be there, and so forth. We are designing it over here. And in the work area, this was on the work from home in the home area. In the work area, what we are saying in continuation to what we are I just now told, that since cars will be less, and since pedestrianization and bike and cycling will be more, we are also thinking of this small decentralized parking lots. You can't bring your cars right and park them always in front of your house or in front of your office, creating a mess. I think of Sector 5, where throughout the day, on normal days, it's so crowded with parked cars that it's hardly possible to walk. Now that less commuting will take place in any case, this is a unique chance of putting decentralized parking lots where people will park and walk the last 500 meters or so. And therefore, it will be a much more organized and walk-friendly cities that I can see that's going to happen. Another major thing that's going to happen in the urban areas, we in the classical urban development theory always say that the three E's drive the cities: the education, employment, and entertainment. Now, this entertainment and hospitality is completely gone. People are so scared of moving out and being in crowded places. So it's all home delivery. And therefore, what's going to happen to this restaurant, to these shopping malls, to these cinema halls, these multiplexes? In my mind, I think the transition will take place. They will mostly go to the home care health sector unit. The only place even yesterday, we saw the 150 nurses from the Northeast are going back to their respective states. There is a reordering of things, and therefore home care professionals are going to be in huge demand. People are not going to eat outside, and they are going to need home care inside. People are mortally afraid, take it from me, of going to isolation centers and quarantine centers and COVID hospital. They think of cross-infection. So they are coming, the housing societies are coming and meeting me and saying, just in case somebody of our own has an infection, please allow us to take care of him in our local community center, but don't take him to an isolation center because they will be affected by cross-infection. Since we are going to live with COVID, we are going to live with epidemics, we are going to happen these things. So more and more decentralized medical health issues will come in. And therefore, the quick transition, just like the auto wallas are selling eggs and vegetables, likewise, hospitality industry and shopping mall and all the other places and cinema halls, everything must very quickly make a transition to this care industry, health industry, home care industry, home delivery industry. And for that, from the urban development point of view, certain changes have to be made in the physical infrastructure as well. So what I see is that the cinema halls, everybody is looking at more Netflixes only, or OTT as they call it, and this is going to happen. So what will happen to these shopping halls and other places? To my mind, these will be converted into some form of, except for the ground floor perhaps, which will be showing things to the people, and the other things will be into some kind of warehouses. You need this to be stored somewhere for quick delivery to home. And therefore, these kinds of very drastic changes are going to happen. The last point that I wish to say, that how I see cities changing and how we must prepare, is in the field of contactless cash. Again, the government, since the demonetization days, has been trying to go to digital cash without much success, as all of us know. But now people are afraid that the virus is going to spread from this cash, because we all know how many people still count cash with their saliva, a very, very bad practice, but it happens. And therefore, I have seen people who take the cash and put it in a bottle full of detergent and wash it and then only accept it. So people are afraid of catching infection. They want to avoid cash, and therefore, contactless cash, like contactless delivery, contactless dining, and all the other things, everything is going to be contactless. There is going to be contactless parts in offices. You walk in, and everything automatically senses you with cameras, and it opens up. And this kind of transitions, these kind of things are going to happen. So I would stop at this and say that this is a time of micro localization, of even in cities, in small parts, number of cars, number of will go down, work from home will go up. Therefore, origin destination transitions will be less, and therefore there should be residential cocoons and and office areas, small parking lots. Normal entertainment industry is going to go away. Data centers and telecommunication and telecommuting is going to go up. And of course, I will end again by quoting Professor Harari. Changes are going to happen very fast. And if even if it is a cliche, if you don't see who moved my cheese, you will miss the cheese. Thank you, Sudip.
Thank you, sir. That was indeed very, very comprehensive and very clear that life after COVID is going to be completely different. One small question that I wanted to ask is you had Navadvipa and Newtown, and both of the areas together almost control or dominate the economic activities of the state. So how do you see the economic activities restarting in these two areas, and particularly in terms of technology company? I work there. I'm dying to go there. But we have opened our offices, but it's once in 3 days, 33% staff. So when do you see things becoming normal in these areas?
Well, it won't be normal. Twitter has said for life you can work from home. TCS has said 75% people shall keep on working on home. There is a very good real estate logic to it as well, as I just mentioned. If you have to give a 2 meter isolation zone for every employee, or else you will be hauled up for spreading infection, the number of people that your office can hold in Sector 5, for example, is going to drastically reduce. So my sense is that it's going to stay that way. Empty streets, very few people coming. And even though Government of India has already said that 50% of IT sector people can come in and work from home, I can tell, I go there every day, I can say that in Sector 5, it's less than 10%. It's a guess estimate, but that's how things are. The point that I would, however, like to say is that globally, now thinking of going from micro localization to globally, there is a huge sentiment against China, good or bad, I don't know. This is right. It's being reported. Hubei and Wuhan spread the infection. That is how it goes. Economic crimes, and everybody is crying about the Japanese government has announced $2.2 billion for moving away industries away from China. Now, it is here that we are trying to capitalize on it. I mean, since industries are looking for spaces and crossing boundaries is going to be a problem, industries shall be located in places where there is a good amount of consumer demand. If Apple is producing, for example, iPhones in Malaysia, where the labor cost is 15% cheaper than in India, but it can't sell how many phones can Vietnamese people buy? So they have to come to places like India, to places like Bengal, which is a huge consumer industry. And therefore, transportation logistics are less. And in these COVID days, where every border is sealed, the air travel is going to be sealed. No country is kind of trusting the others. Only Australia and New Zealand, with a bit of thing, might happen. They might allow something, and every border is sealed up. Think of the Indian case also. So therefore, we think that near the consumer places like in Bengal, there will be a lot of activity where consumer goods can be made. And specifically, therefore, in this respect, we are targeting IT and electronic industries, because Wuhan and Hubei used to now, perhaps they still do have the capacity of manufacturing 80% of the world's computer hardware components. 80% of the world's electronic computer hardware. Now it's completely closed. Now things won't last this way. They have to go somewhere. And therefore, in the Bengal Silicon Valley IT Hub, we have already floated expression of interest. We are inviting investors all around the world, and Indian Chamber of Commerce has also been helping us in this, in reaching out and saying that if you have to change from China, along with other countries in Southeast Asia, also look at Bengal, Silicon Valley IT Hub. Likewise, for the FinTech Hub, the lot, as I mentioned about contactless money, a lot of transition is going to happen. Blockchain and cryptocurrency is going to again come back. People have already started reinvesting over there. And therefore, we also think that a lot of fintech companies and financial institutions will be necessary, who will again come out from China and seek a place elsewhere. And also here, we have floated the EOI and we are inviting people. So, Sudip, what you said was that in Sector 5 and Newton, which is the hub of IT and electronics and technology, we are very open to this idea of looking at the post-COVID scenario, that global sentiment is moving away from China, and we are preparing ourselves to wean some people over here. Sudip.
Great, that would be fantastic, and I think this will be a great hope for revitalization of West Bengal. So wish you all the best for the success of fintech. It will really make a huge contribution to the state. I would like to now move on to Mr. Sureka. Mr. Sureka, you have headed CREDAI and now you're the Vice President of ICC, and obviously very much involved with the real estate industry. So what is your view on the challenges that the real estate sector is facing? And going forward, what would you think would be short-term and medium-term revivals that can be planned in the sector? The other part I would also like you to speak about is how do you see the changes in the urban planning process post-COVID?
Well, there are two different questions. So first, I'll take up your second question. You see, the biggest challenge post-COVID or during COVID, which the government is facing, which the common man is seeing, is places where there are slums, there are high congested living areas, high congested trading areas, like you have today in the papers, you had about the Posta, the North Calcutta markets or the fish markets, or as Mr. Sen was earlier mentioning, opening up roads, footpaths for walking. So there are a lot of hawkers on the streets. All of these are, of course, a necessity of a city. They are part of the survival of a city. But if these people and if the government has to be prepared for another COVID or another COVID-like epidemic, which could happen in 2021 or 22, we don't know. I think psychologically people are going to be preparing themselves. The government has to prepare themselves. People have to prepare themselves for the future. If a calamity like this happens, we are better prepared. We are today far more educated. So we have to think of these urban poor. They are the large sector of population, how we are going to set up these markets, how we are going to discipline the hawkers, how can we bring more hygiene in, how we can make their lives a little more comfortable and make our urban fabric a little more safer. Coming to the second part of real estate, yes, real estate was going through a bad patch in the last 2 to 3 years already pre-COVID. This COVID has only sort of heightened our fears of this industry. We are very largely dependent on migratory labor for our working. Social distancing is a huge challenge in these sites, because if you have to keep labor at site, then social challenging becomes, because every site is not very large. There are small sites, there are large sites. So, and there are different types of contractors who work, and each contractor has their own challenges. So the migratory labor, handling them is going to be a big challenge. in the short term, or rather maybe for a year, year and a half, the demand cycle is going to be a little depressed. People will be low, feeling low. As Mr. Sen was saying, people, if they're working from home, there's going to be a lot of commercial space which could, either not be used or not be rented out, or the ones which are rented out would get vacant. Of course, I understand that this epidemic has put not only the industry, not only the businessman, but the government also under stress, financial stress. And it has put the people under financial stress. So I think each stakeholder has to hold hands, each other's hand, to find ways. If in Sector 5, where we have a lot of space, if we start getting spaces which are vacant, I may not be able to pay taxes. I may not be able to pay many of my expenses. So I would expect some hand-holding from the government there till we are able to find alternate uses as we see the demand coming in for new types of demands coming in. Another area, which is retail area, which a lot of retail area is there across the city, will again in the short term, well, I'm an optimistic. I feel that after a year, year and a half, we will again, once the vaccine comes in, we will find ways of social distancing, even in our restaurants, even in our cinemas. I mean, they are talking about airlines opening up. So that's one of the best examples as to how we're going to sort out social distancing. I was getting some WhatsApp, this thing where restaurants are coming up where, they are making cabins inside restaurants where 2 people or 3 people are sitting, and the waiters and they are not touching each other. So till we find alternate ways, I think all the stakeholders, including the government, including the private people, will have to share some burden of the financial stress and see how we can all come out of this, find alternate use, because our real estate industry is a very, very important industry for the economy of the state, economy of the city. For so many industries it supports, so many of the migratory labor gets jobs in this industry. So we will have to find ways and means of reviving our business, reviving the economy. And I would request, of course, since Mr. Sen is here, we have the privilege of having him here with us, to have a small committee of the government, of people, different people, and to see how each one can contribute to the rebirth, the regrowth, relook at how we can reutilize spaces which are lying empty, whether it's for medical purpose, whether it's for any use which would be there tomorrow. As Mr. Sen was giving us some very good ideas as to how people could be working tomorrow from different zones, how we could be, trying to centralize things. So there are many, many areas where we could help each other. We could become more efficient, become more. Today, one of the small examples is today the approval time is so lengthy that today we cannot afford that. Tomorrow it will be even worse. If I have bought land and if I have to incur interest for 1 year, I would rather start my work in 2 months. Save me my interest for 10 months. So these are the things where we need to work. I appreciate that the government is also under financial stress, but there are ways and means where we can probably hold hands and help each other. Thank you.
Sudip, I'll just take one last point from Mr. Sureka. Sureka is very correct. This ease of doing business, this was also happening, that to reduce the forms and other things. And all I'm saying is that these things will be bulldozed now. It has to be very, very quick, online and fast. And labor reforms and other things have been happening. Kolkata is one of the 4 cities that World Bank is measuring on ease of doing business, and it shall be put into fast track. I have no doubts in my mind.
Technology, ability, innovation, and agility will perhaps be some of the factors that we'll have to adopt in our daily processes. But I think listening to Mr. Sen and Mr. Sureka, it's amazing the transformation that this one COVID is going to put into our personal lives as well as to the industry in general. And very, very excited that both the government and private sectors have done a lot of homework in thinking ahead. Particularly, I think would thank Mrs. Sen for giving a very comprehensive view of what could happen and what would be possible solutions. I'll move on to Mr. Apurva Salarpuria. Salarpuria has been a major player in the real estate in West Bengal, in Bangalore, in across the country. It is said that there would be significant ways in the businesses would operate, and technology would certainly play a major role. How do you see the real estate sector reinventing itself post-COVID, and what are the steps that you are personally contemplating in your organization?
Sure. Thank you so much. And it's given me a lot of food. What Mr. We've of course operate. We built the Novotel in Mr. Sen's tenure under his guidance, and I must say he's one of the most forward-looking officers we have in our state. So I'm happy to get a lot of thought from that. But coming to your question, see, digital transformation is one of the buzzwords which is going on today. And we have, in the last many days, tried to understand how this is going to affect not only our industry, but even specifically our company. Because at the end of the day, the implementation has to start at the micro level. And, then it can percolate to the industry. So, of course, there are, challenges on the industry as far as space utilization. The commercial space is going to get impacted. But the other side of it is that if the premise is that office utilization is going to become lower because more people are going to work from home, the reality is that you need more space at home. And of course, it was great to hear Mr. Sen talk about these cocoons which are going to be made available for people to utilize in their work from home scenario. But if you are going to spend, instead of the current 10 to 12 hours or even lesser, if you're going to spend 17, 18 hours at home, you will need more space, whether it is for your kids to do their classes, whether it is for you to work. And so we are already planning for some of our facilities, while we are not increasing the flat sizes because that has an impact on the affordability of these. We are converting a lot of our common club area facilities into a work from home facility where somebody can come in, take up a desk space, have a high Wi-Fi connectivity, which is a key requirement, and work in their own environment. Even take up small meeting spaces. So if you need to do a work meeting, you need not go to office. You can have one or two people come and do these meetings. So some of these things are going to happen. I'm just giving you one or two examples because there are a number of these design implications on which are going to happen, which will change the way we design buildings. But coming to digital transformation, our realization is that the biggest piece of digital transformation is to change the mindset of people, because technology for digitization has existed in large quantities in even before COVID, but a brick and mortar industry like ours has been slightly resistant in adopting technology. So we are seeing, and a lot of my colleagues are also on this call, as I saw, is that when we are having our bi-weekly meetings right now on Zoom, we are driving to them that now digitization is not an option. Earlier, we used to talk about the benefit of digitization. Today, we are seeing that if we do not digitize, we will not survive. So I think this is an opportunity for all of us to change our mindsets. And that is the biggest challenge for digitization. Like I said, digital tools were available, and we will see more advanced tools being available. So, for example, in our organization, we have a learning policy, and this is actually just pre-COVID, to digital. And all our people have had allowed learning, and across the company, people have done multiple courses across platform to upgrade their skills, because people are not only having to upgrade but also reskill to do multiple jobs. That is going to be the reality of tomorrow. So that is one thing which we have done. The other thing, again, which we were doing to some extent before COVID, but we are accelerating now, is our partnership and our collaboration with startups. Because see, the real estate industry, like I said, has not been a very high adopter of technology. We have always said we are a brick and mortar industry, we will work in our fashion. But now we have realized the importance of working with startups, and there are a number of talented startups in our sector, right from startups who help us monitor our workflow better. At one shot you can see how many coats of plaster have happened across 15 projects across the country, to what is the time delay which is happening because one activity has got delayed across all your projects, to tools where today we can go and take a customer into a digital version of our model flat and walk with him from room to room to show him the finishes, to talk to him about each room. So this kind of technology is already made available, and again, both on the ICC platform and CREDAI platform, both of where I'm fairly active, we have done multiple workshops with startups. And as some of you know, I've been a participant in that ecosystem for the last 10-12 years, particularly because of our Bangalore background. And we have tried to bridge that gap with startups. And in our company, for example, we are using a company called Falcon Break and another one called Quick Spec, which we are using to monitor progress of projects. We are so number of these initiatives across these two formats, and there's a whole lot of more stuff. But I think I hope that you've got the flavor of what I'm meaning to say.
Thank you, Apurva. I think it's very encouraging to know that looking at creating space, the tolerance level at home is now running thin. After the first 10 days between this home and the children, I think this situation is not as congenial as before. So redesigning of housings to have some space where one could go out, use the Wi-Fi connection would be very, very welcome. Thank you very much. Just one more question that I wanted to ask you is that you have been an investor, and getting funding in the real estate sector has been a challenge of late, particularly in terms of long-term funding. Do you see that as intensifying more? Do you see the package that has been given to the NBFCs somewhat resolving the seriousness of the situation?
Two things I'll share there, Mr. Datta. I think, in one, there is going to be a flight to quality across everything. If today somebody is going to put money into a bank FD, he's also saying, let me put it in SBI or an HDFC instead of looking at 1% extra rate in another bank, whatever that is. So even from a lender point of view, banks are flush with liquidity. As we are seeing various reports, they are parking in excess of 8 lakh crores with RBI. On the reverse repo mechanism at 3.5% rate. So it's not a liquidity issue. It's a credit risk issue. It's a trust issue where there is a lack of clarity. So I think even on that front, for companies who have demonstrated track record, who have demonstrated their ability to deliver projects, after some initial hiccups in the immediate times when banks are also uncertain, I think liquidity will not be a challenge. But coming to the point that you were making, one of the fundamental challenges that we've had as a sector, real estate, hospitality, the entire social infrastructure piece, is that we have not been recognized as a infrastructure industry, which means that our cost of financing is higher because banks have to, in fact, even for standard assets, as you might know, banks have to make additional provision for real estate loans because we are in a provisioning category which so demands. So a long-standing demand has been that we be classified as infrastructure because what we are building is social infrastructure. The other, that essentially would hopefully bring down the cost of funding to some extent. The other requirement is that there is a time mismatch, just like we had seen with the NBFCs where there was a asset deposit mismatch. With the real estate sector, for example, when we are building hotels, the gestation period for a hotel is far longer than what the banks are currently able to lend. Although there has been some allowance as far as the RBI is concerned in easing some norms, but the reality is that is not translated into at the ground level. So both tenure of loans and costs have to come down. One of the things which it entails is to give infrastructure status so that we get dealt with appropriately at all levels. But the other thing which I really feel is going to be required is for a private bond market, which has been a long requirement of our country. And, for infrastructure assets like hotels, hospitals, and things like that, a private bond market has to emerge, which will also ensure both long-term funds as well as cheaper funds, because the cost of those transactions go down and people are able to take exposure to specific assets instead of going through a bank, which spreads its risk. So I think this is a real requirement, and I think a lot of discussions are happening through CREDAI, both at a local level and at a national level. We have written to both RBI and the central government to try and push some of these measures. We are hoping that some of these come in, because we understand, like Mr. Sureka also pointed out, that governments also are have their finances being challenged, but some of these measures don't require them to come out with finances immediately. So we hope that some of these demands can be taken up by the government, and long-term reforms, just like we heard some announcements today across other industries. I hope some of these long-term reforms can come about in these times.
Yeah, I think that would be very, very important. One last question to all three of you. I think Mr. Sureka did touch about it. One of the risks that we are facing is the kind of proximity living that is there, particularly in these areas. Dharavi in Mumbai has emerged as a major hotspot, and there are probably large number of hotspots across the country. And given that we are expected to live with the pandemic conditions, I think this is why we needs a lot more collaboration with the government and the private sector to take action. I think we should look at minimum living standards that we are able to give to our people. So I'd like to have 2 minutes on this, how we effectively deal with this. Yeah, Apurva starts during this week.
Mr. Datta, I'm sorry, whom did you want to start? We can start in whatever order you want.
I'm sorry. I
you
think
can start with it.
Yeah, so we were talking again, I will again come back. We were talking about the urban poor, the migratory labor. We could sit down today, industries which are just on the suburbs of these urban cities, we could encourage them to create housing for labor. We could, as Mr. Sen was saying, can you have micro cities, micro hubs around this thing? We could, like you have in the foreign countries where we go for construction workers, they have housing. So they have labor camps, which are very hygienic, very in Dubai, so they are all air conditioned. So we could start thinking of the viability of such projects within our country, within our cities, urban fabric. And we have a champion, Mr. Sen, here with us, and there's no better a champion than him to think of something innovative and come up with, and guide us through something where, each construction site, each construction area, let's take Newtown. If we can create some labor camps around that, where we could be, they could, on the long run, government can create their assets on their certain lands.
And constructors can hire it on rent. Yes.
So, we could think of innovative ways so that the government does not have to, tomorrow if they're faced with another epidemic, they spend so much of money without any revenue. And I'm sure if we can bring back all these business activities back and bring back these migratory labor, it will give them the confidence to come back and work in the cities again. Over to Mr. Sen and Apurva.
Sure. So I think absolutely, and in fact, I'm happy to share. We've already started discussions with a couple of our architects who have actually designed some of this, and we've tried to do some basic math. If we work on a rental model with our contractors, without significant addition to cost, these kind of camps can be provided. Especially if the government is able to provide us locations where we are able to, even at a cost, and I'm not talking for free, but on a rental kind of regime. Of course, in large sites, sometimes we are able to provide locations ourselves. But the other thing which I really feel that this is an opportunity for governments across the country is that we the historical slums that we have across all major cities in the country. Maharashtra, of course, has a redevelopment policy, which which is benefiting thousands of people every year. Where the people in the current conditions are able to get a better made house. There is an economic opportunity where, in lieu of that, the builder is able to get some area to build. Of course, there are a number of challenges, and it's not a easy political thing to do. So, it's not in our democratic setup. There are large political challenges as far as this is concerned. But I think this is a great opportunity if we can get something like this going across our states, where a lot of our slums can be redeveloped over a period of the next 5-10 years. If the framework can come, I'm sure private capital and private execution can partner. Because this as much as we will work with labor and things like that, that will not solve the existing problems of some slums. So in spite of the policy, Maharashtra has not been able to do anything with Dharavi, for example, till now in a great way. But I hope that this, at least from a policy point of view, there can be some intervention. We would love to participate, and even if it has a lower profit margin, but it is something which will add value to all our other properties in the long run, if the city becomes more livable and more desirable by more people.
Sudip, if I may pose a question first to Apurva and then to Mr. Sureka. Apurva, you mentioned that the size of the flats in the housing setting, the first part you had mentioned,
Right,
will not be increased, even though there is a little more requirement of space by working from home. When we were in the districts, I was the district magistrate, for example, inevitably from the British days, there would be first an office and then your residents would come in. We used to call it bungalow offices. If you have been to any of these districts of Bardhaman, Birbhum, Alipur, and so on, you will inevitably find a very established kind of a tradition. I think that's what's going to come back, but that would mean people will no longer be able to do it a 2 BHK or even a 3 BHK. For those people who are working in, let us say, Sector 5 or TCS, they're slightly at the higher level, they are going to need for a BHK plus. That's my sense of the thing, because they need a separate office room and the children can play and teach. Everything is happening online. The children are getting education online. The wife, if she is a professor or a lecturer or a teacher, she's teaching online. He is doing video conferences online. So even keeping apart the cocoon that I'm talking about, if those who can afford, I think this 3 BHK, 2 BHK will go away. Either you have EWS, labor quarters, 1 BHK, or 4 BHK, 5 BHK. That's my sense. And maybe the company will kind of give soft loans because they are saving on real estate space. What is your sense? And then I would request Mr. Sureka also to react.
Sure, sir. Two things I'll share here, sir. One is, sir, you're absolutely right. The requirement for space is being felt even more, where people right now in the COVID times are spending so much time at home. Children are having online classes. People are working from home. The wife may also be working or needs her own space. Now, in times like this, sir, the value of a home and larger space is undisputed. But the challenge still remains that, unless income levels go up, and sir, in the short term, incomes are actually getting challenged. Which makes it more difficult for people to buy larger houses, to make larger commitments of such large amount of capital. So one of the things, of course, which I spoke about is that we are trying to create more spaces in the community, because you don't need for your entire workday to have a private space. Maybe for 2 hours when you're doing some critical work or you're having an online meeting, you want that private space. So some of that will emerge. Size increase for maybe somebody who was buying a 2 BHK will now buy a 3 BHK if he can afford. Some of these things, but sir, 2 more things I would like to share. One is there is a increased discussion about flexible homes, where I'm able to have some amount of, maybe for one room, I have a moving wall, which I can, just like we have in banquet partitions and things like that, which I can move or open depending on how my requirement is. So some of these smart solutions will come out in, of course, in urban locations where costs are higher. The other thing we are seeing, sir, which is emerging, not yet so much in Calcutta, but we see discussions happening in Calcutta, where companies are also saying that, we will make hotels and such facilities available for some part of their workforce for some period of time, because they are saying, hotel has Wi-Fi, high-speed Wi-Fi available, food is available, isolated space is available. So for an employee who is requiring critical time, instead of having him work in the disturbance of their thing, till such time new infrastructure comes up, new houses he's able to move to, let us also give him some workspace for maybe 2 days a week. He can go and work in a hotel in that dedicated space. His wife, children also get thing. And for example, in Bangalore, there is a hotel which Accenture has taken up even pre-COVID, 30% of the inventory for the entire year. They've also moved their learning center to that place. So some of these trends are also coming, sir. And, on the hotel side, we are also looking at opportunities to provide some of these services. But, we will see a lot of these different responses. I think a combination of these responses is what I would imagine.
So I think Apurva has actually covered whatever I would have, as I was saying, flexible spaces. People will have to, whether the architect designs it, the interior designer designs it, the builder creates it, some flexibility. Like I remember 15 years back in Mumbai, the kitchen in the night used to turn into a bedroom. I mean, people were sleeping in the kitchen because in the night it's not used for anything else. So, so people will start finding, of course, affordability is always going to be an issue. So a person who's working in a call center or somebody can not afford more than a 2-bedroom house or something like that. But if he has to find ways and means, he has to create a cubicle inside his house. We have to help him in designing a place which has a little fresh air window coming in and gets a little sunlight, but it could be a 6x6 cubicle in his house. So one has to do that. In larger complexes, as Apurva was saying earlier, if the community spaces will not be required so much, we could create flexible spaces where people could rent out for 2 hours, 3 hours, 1 hour, and the so-called addas. Like when you go abroad, you will see somebody with a computer sitting in a Starbucks for 3 hours working out of a Starbucks with a computer. So we could be creating that where you are maintaining social distancing, but still seeing somebody else working from there in a computer, maybe 10 feet away. So these are the areas within large complexes we could create into some community spaces. Maybe, as I said, again, I'm repeating, sir, that we'll have to start relooking at the laws, which you are writing today for building sanctions. They may need to become flexible to accommodate such things. You see, 20 years back, nobody was making 35-story, 30-story buildings. We had to relook at the laws to make tall buildings. Now we have to start relooking at laws to make it flexible. Today, there are many restrictions. You can't make a room bigger than this. You can't make a room. I would rather have my maid staying in my house today rather than sending her off.
Very true.
So we have to be now flexible. We have to look at maybe how the Japanese live. They can, in a 10 by 10, 100 square feet, they have an apartment. So we'll have to rethink, put up our thinking caps again and come up with solutions, preempt certain things, learn from other people, learn from what other countries are doing. And I'm sure we'll be faster than them to implement it, sir.
Well, but still, Apurva, my tip to you is cut down as the whole world is becoming more and more unequal. The very rich and the very poor. the Facebook owners and the Tesla owners are going to be super rich, and many people like me are going to be super poor. So the point is, you have 1 bedroom and then only 4 BHK and 5 BHK. This is where the world is going. So take care in your next project.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, I think we've collected so much of massive information that we should document this. and come out with a document, because there's been some amazing ideas that have come in. Questions. So we had one question from Sandeep Raichadri. Sandeep, there? Okay, while I think this is connected, I think Chandana wanted to ask a couple of questions, if you want to do that.
Good afternoon, panel. It's a great listening. And always, but particularly in this scenario, in the crisis period, when we know that we have to have a lot of challenges and we don't know how to face. So it's very, very important and great listening, particularly for me. I am Chandana from PwC. So I have two questions, one for Debashis sir and another for Mr. Apurva Salarpuria. So I want to ask first, Debashis sir. So this is a question more on behavioral level. People living in cities are known to have higher level of stress due to urban lifestyle and work culture, definitely. And particularly, this has increased, sir, many times during the pandemic situation. So, sir, what is your advice to deal with the situation?
Well, I thought people are having too much of building back the relationship and spending time with the family. I mean, we are now quite sick of our, pardon my saying so, take it with the tongue in the cheek comment. On a more serious note, I had this exact question from one of my colleagues day before yesterday. He is saying that my partition between home and office is dissolving and I'm getting confused in my mind. What do you have anything to say? I first said that do some yoga if you can, or else if it depends, my response would depend on your age. If you are young, starting your career, build alternative competencies. I am myself and spend some money on that. I am myself spending 9,000 princely rupees on learning advanced French and keeping myself occupied in other than work, because work and home and everything is coming down. And very well said, mentally we are not
Yes,
getting like Apurva's partitions. In the mind also, the partition is dissolving. And what is home, what is work, what is children, what is boss? We are getting confused. It's a human nature.
yes,
The left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. And therefore, we need to engage in certain activities that interests us, whether it's yoga and whether it's French. That would be my quick solution. Apurva.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I would like to know from Mr. Salarpuria, sir, we guess as a result of post-COVID, there will be a drop in the speed of urbanization. And will that result in shifting growth in the rural areas?
See, I can share with you my thoughts on this at a macro level. I'm of course not an expert on this subject, but see, my overall sense is that as a country of this size, we have far fewer cities than we should. The pressure on most of our cities, Mumbai today is a 20 million plus population. Calcutta itself is one of the largest cities in our country. So I think we need more planned growth in our medium size. Bengal needs to have 2 or 3 more large cities apart from just a Calcutta. Durgapur needs to come up, Asansol needs to come up, some of these other towns need to come up. And so I don't think urbanization is going to go away. Definitely a lot more opportunities will arise at the rural levels because not everybody wants to come back to a city. At the same time, because of the advantages of being in a place of larger economic activity, people will be driven to cities. I think our best bet is to try and develop more more urban centers. Newtown is a great example. I think it's one area where, because it's been planned from scratch, we have great infrastructure and I'm not saying this because Mr. Sen is on the chat. We are participants in the benefits of that place. Is that right from infrastructure which is adequately planned, the density of the place is also far superior. For example, in a sector 5, the FSI which has been done as a post facto, it was not planned as a city of that density. It is at 5.9, virtually 6 times the land area. Whereas in New Town, we are practically, even though specific plots have up to 3 FSI, the overall town has marginal utilization on an overall basis. So even from a social distancing point of view or a density point of view, because of better planning, because adequate area is given to not only roads and infrastructure, but even social infrastructure like malls, hotels, all of them are available in that same infrastructure, same area. Need not to go to Park Street or another area to go for your shopping or your hotel, etc. So I think more planned urbanization and more centers of urbanization, I think, is the requirement, because as much as there are challenges, I don't think urbanization is going away. We should look at improving it rather than going away from it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
But I think Sureka then.
Hello.
Yeah, Sandeep, you had a question.
Yeah. Sir, my name is Sandeep Roy Chaudhary. I am from Sanitary Syndicate Private Limited. We are in construction industry. Sir, my question is to the panel is that how we are planning to bring back confidence on the health safety of the workforce during as they are all in the trauma of COVID-19. One. Another thing is that do you envisage any increase in input cost in the construction industry? And the third one is how we are planning to restart the industry. Thank you.
I think Mr. Sureka can answer.
Well, first, about bringing back the confidence, I think in our panel discussion, we've discussed this, that we all, including you and me, we both have to play a role. We have to not look at the cost at the moment. We have to look at production to start with. So we have to bring in more hygiene and make sure that the health and the hygiene of the labor who's coming to work for us is better. This is in the quick short term. In the long run, we'll have to think of better automation, better mechanization of our industry, so that there is automatic hygiene and safety being built into our this thing. So it is for you also and for me also to help. And we both, you will also work with me, so we know how to, create a good training. We have to educate our labor also. You see, their labor doesn't want to wear a helmet tomorrow. We have a big problem on certain laborers who doesn't want to, so we've been educating them. So we'll have to educate them on this particular aspect also. As far as restarting the industry is concerned, I think it will slowly happen. The confidence of the economy, the confidence of buyers, people are scared of losing jobs, salary cuts. So maybe the next quarter or 2 quarters, with all the efforts which the central government and the state governments are making to reopen industry, to reopen, we have to have public transport. So it is a good time for us to plan how to restart our industries. We'll have to wait and watch as to what is the level of demands and how quickly the demands are, the confidence to the demands generated back, especially for housing. As far as costs are concerned, it's a matter of wait and watch. There will be, in certain items, a demand-supply gap. There may be demand and the supply may not be there. The logistics has to be of all the materials, and the logistics has to be worked out. So it's too early to really predict and with confidence say that it will come down or go up. But in the short run, there are going to be difficulties. So in the short run, every businessman must think of starting and being part of revival of the economy, the revival of starting of the economy. And then I'm sure we will all be part of the success or the rebirth of India.
Thank you. Question from Rishikesh. Rishikesh, if you are there.
Sorry?
No, there was one question from Rishikesh. Rishikesh, if you are there.
My question is to Mr. Sen. Mr. Sen, good evening. I wanted to find out from you that how do you foresee technology adoption in older cities like Kolkata in future, which would make the cities more resilient against future pandemics like COVID or even for that matter dengue?
Yeah, very important. I mean, the whole world is shifting and technology will be the backbone. I have already said, and you may be there at that time, people are going to travel less physically, but they are going to travel globally. Intellectual property is going for globalization, and actual manufacturing and other things are going to become micro localized, hyper localized, as they call it. So for older cities like Kolkata and other places also, you have to have fiber bone and data centers and decentralized, and it is going to be the backbone. Everybody has to adopt or else perish. And I have already given my small idea of how to integrate. That is to have at residential zones small cocoons of very warm, technologically equipped, a relaxing workplace, which will give confidence to the worker, whether he's in Paikpara or in Shialda or in Bagbazar. I have designed Abin Design Studio, who is one of the finest architects, and he has constructed the Nazrul Tirtha in Newtown, and I are having a conversation. It only takes 1 katha of land, 600 square feet, and we can make a beautiful decentralized cocoon and workplace, and that will be technology. Think of Bagbazar. When I think of Bagbazar, narrow streets, 2-storied old crumbling houses, but 600 square feet, I'm sure you can find out in any area. And if you can, you build this small thing, which doesn't cost much. It will be as a few lakhs, nothing in crore region. And that's going to be how you induct technology into older areas of the city.
Thank you.
Yeah. There was one question that we've got from Debashis Sureka. He says that would the future expansion focus on urbanization, or are we looking at decentralized growth considering the impacts of COVID?
To me? Hello? I don't know. Sudip, you have gone out of reach.
No, I think, sir, he was asking, I think you have earlier, Mr. Sen has answered that. He said that, urbanization's process, I think all of us have mentioned this in this thing, that there will be zoning now. People will try to start living closer to where they live, or like say a new town. You will have new zones, new hubs of urban areas which will be created, which may not be that high congested. We have to decongest. The urban spread will happen. Urban spread is not going to stop. But you may have to, tomorrow maybe Asansol and Durgapur will become closer to Calcutta. You will have zones which are created in between. You'll have to decentralize. People will spread out their way they live, the way they want to work. They don't want to travel too long. So urbanization is not going away. The way urbanization is going to happen is going to change.
Yes, I'll take from that. I'll take from that. One minute, Sudip. I'll take from that. I'll give you a live example. Day before yesterday, 48 hours before today, a group of residents of Newtown came and met me at NKDA. And they said that please seal off all our borders. We don't want people from neighboring COVID affected places to come in. We are quite happy. We are relatively free. Just isolate us. You see, this isolationism, complete reversal from 1991, liberalization, perestroika, globalization, open trade, all countries are now cut off, all states are now cut off, all districts are now cut off, and now all cities are going to be cut off. And I would like you to think, if you have been to IIT Kharagpur, think of a kind of a 700, 800 acre educational township. It is self-sufficient in all regards. Think of a railway township like Kharagpur. It is self-sufficient in everything. We are going to have small 500, 700 acre small townships which will be self-contained. I think that's the scenario.
Looking at developing new projects.
Not able to hear you, Mr. Datta.
Sudip, you're
Basically,
very, very bad.
Mr. Datta, it may be
Mr.
useful.
Sureka and we can communicate very well, but Sudip, your voice is breaking always.
I think PwC will definitely not allow you to work from home.
no,
Mr. Datta,
have
it
a
may be
section
useful to
on
put
Zoom.
your video off. Sometimes that improves the voice quality because of the bandwidth issue. If you can put your video off,
Yes.
your audio might improve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sudip, we can't hear you at all. You're not audible.
Okay, I just connect through.
It's a little better now, last few words.
Why don't you turn your video off, Sudip?
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Much better.
Yeah, the question was to Mr. Sureka, will you be following social distancing for construction workers? Is there an SOP being worked out? And would that mean delays in terms of project? That's from Mr. Anindya Vera.
No, I don't think so. The SOP for COVID is going to delay the project. I think getting the workers back and bringing them back to work is the challenge. The SOPs we are already working out. There are a lot of SOPs which have come out from many contractors, many industries. We are running one of the largest malls in Calcutta. We've already worked out on SOPs and as to how to restart our mall. We are running a school. We are thinking if the school's open, what will be the SOP? So SOP is not a problem. I think the problem is getting the migrant labor back to the cities to work, number one. And number two, give them the confidence that they'll be looked after. So I think those are the bigger challenges. The delays could be because, as I said, the logistics may not be there of many materials, many production, city across city, cross-border city movements. So these are the reasons which they could delay the projects, not because of the SOP for COVID.
Right. Thank you very much. I think we have overshot our time, so it has been an amazing conversation. And thank you very much, all of you. Paramita, would you like to take this from here?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Debashis and sir, for joining us. Mr. Sureka, sir, thank you very much. Mr. Salarpuria. Mr. Sudip Datta, you had moderated the session, one in the morning and now today. Thank you for taking valuable time out of your busy schedule, sir, all of you. And thank you for enlightening us. We have a couple of good questions just come up, participants who have seen this, and they were really looking forward to hear from experts from you all. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you again like this virtually and also physically very soon, sir. Thank you, Chandana ma'am, for helping us, and thank you for other panelists as well. Have a good weekend. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Sen.
you for the meeting. Thank you.